The afternoon was hard work. Sun beat down as Finoli, Fergus and Osrith tramped between the carts, fetching greased linen, slinging it over trees and fixing it securely to the ground, assembling Domhnall's chair of an ash set upon more greased linen, with woolen and linen bedding. Around her, the languages of many coloured the air. She could understand little, but each tongue was distinguishable as Gaelish or Irish, mostly tongues of workers hurrying to do what she and the men were doing, that is, preparing for their lords from an assemblage of carts, covered wagons and horse panniers. Food was beginning to be cooked, the smell of pig and pheasant, hen and fish permeated the high summer air, making Osrith's stomach grumble. Between the four of them it took many hours, as the household of the Dyja Findlaith guarded the stores, and eventually, as the temperature dropped, and evening settled upon them, with Domhnall's canvas room erect, the warriors were invited to follow their lord to collect food from the old cook, who had accompanied them down from Doia. He gave Osrith a foul look when she attempted to ask for bread, though she tried anyway, pointing to the loaves wrapped up in a thin linen cloth, but he stood between her and the bread, giving her another tirade. "He thinks you are a changeling," laughed Finoli. He had closed in on her and stood beside her, amusement around his cheeks. "Well, I'm not," protested Osrith to the cook, who was glaring at her, wishing again that Glimmery, done not as cook, who favoured her, had come with Domhnall and Constantine, and was not feeding the usurpers Giric and Eochaid. Only a changeling would deny their true form. Finoli continued, laughing aloud at Osrith's fury. "Come on, we can get some bread, and some milk too, from the Spother New Neil. I know a man who owes me a favour." They brought the food back to the warriors, who sat in the shade of the ash trees, enjoying their victuals. "I suppose I am with you tonight, but tomorrow I am to sleep with the royal household tomorrow," Osrith told the warriors, when they discussed the next day's wedding. "And why ever is that?" Dad asked, frowning as he chewed on a crust. "Did I not hear Prince Domhnall call you his brave one? Will you not be practicing with us? You nearly had me, yesterday." Osrith smiled. Following the loss of Feda's sword, the warriors had taken pity on her and had each loaned her theirs so she could keep up with her fighting skills. It was a regular thing that one or other would tell her that, had he fought with less skill, she would have bested him. Osrith knew better, she had bested each of them frequently. So, it was a regular thing that she pretended to agree with them. Burping, Finoli got up and shook the crumbs from his clothes, then finished tacking their linen covering next to that of Domhnall. "I must look after the little princes during the ceremony. The queen gave me a dress I have to wear, look." From under her tunic she took the folded fabric and shook it out. It was uncreased and, in the evening sunlight, long rays glinted off the cream fibers and making the pearls glisten. "You, in a dress?" teased Finoli. Osrith kicked a stone towards him, as if in jest. But, the truth was, she hated dresses. She couldn't move in them to climb, or fight. The last dress she had to wear her uncle had brought to her 2 days before she would have been taken to Dunham to the Dankjarten for his son in exchange for loyalty to Bibbenberg. She rolled it up quickly and lay it down on the thick, linen ground sheet, pulling off her sword strap and outer tunic and covering them over the dress. "So, what will be happening tomorrow?" asked Fergus. "The Lord has not told us of our role." "From what I recall," Tadg said, slowly, "and I had drunk quite a bit of ale that day, King processed down the avenue to the Stone of Destiny. The Kalian, Queen Muir that was brought along by her father. His fair hair blew around his head from the blustery wind, and the warrior pressed at his temples, as if to stimulate the memory. An abbot from Kells joined their hands and gold was given by Sained Macalpintard, and, some less, was given to the Kalin. Then, we all drank and feasted, all night till the morning. The Balash and the Kalin are hand-wed too, of course, so they make the most of it." He grinned, and winked at Finoli and Fergus, who blushed almost as red as his hair. "Hand-wed?" Osrith asked, as a young boy leading a donkey helped it pick its way between Domhnall's tent ropes. "Hand-wed," Tadg repeated, taking hold of the right wrist. "The king of the south, who might, the day after, be High King, like his cousin, find Laith, will marry the Dowager Queen. He pulled Osrith closer, his face suddenly taking on a serious tone. He looked right into her eyes, and gripped further up her arm. She in turn felt the urge to hold his. The young people, who want to be wed, will try it for 1 year, till the parley is held again here at Teamrack. Then, they will be asked again whether they want to stay wed. The Balash will look at the Kalin and say, I will be your Fear's wed, until harvest next, be only in your thoughts, only in your heart and only a hand away. And then the Kalin says, I will be your Bean's wed, until harvest next. Osrith found herself repeating Tadg's words, fixing his brilliant blue eyes with her own dull blue-green ones, be only in your thoughts, only in your heart and only a hand away. The world melted away. Locked arm in arm, Tadg and Osrith were the only two people at this ancient Irish ceremonial ground. Them, and the green earth, the Saich, and the old gods of the heathens. Come on, insisted Fergus, breaking the spell as Finn O'Ly mock applauded the happy couple while they unlinked arms and laughed. I'm still starving, and the night's roast should be ready. He pointed across the banqueting hall. We'll be on grease and crusts if we don't get a move on. Food and speeches filled the glorious summer evening. The warriors and royals alike heard of the brave deeds of Flann Sinna against the Norse, and Sinchai told stories of the Irian Isles, of the Fyrdiag, Finn MacFion's Bradon Feeser and the Saich. And the gods of old just beyond Eastby sun sank slowly towards the western horizon. Then, the night was filled with little dots of lantern light, and it seemed to Osrith as if the stars had tumbled from the sky to bring comfort and happiness to the myriad factions gathered at this old hill, as their ancestors had, from time immemorial. I reckon Flann will have to call on the Morrigan, Tadg said, as the four stumbled to where they guessed their tent was. Queen Mab was there tonight, as we hand-wed, he teased Osrith, who gave the Irish warrior a don't ever mention that again to anyone ever look. He grinned, then smoothed his fair hair with his hands as Finn O'Ly looked round with resigned uncertainty, thoughts of challenging his friend over heathen mythology far from his mind. We can sleep under the hedgerow, he suggested, as they stumbled about the campsite. Only if we can't find it, he added, hastily as Fergus, Osrith and Tadg frowned at him, scornfully. I know we are not downwind of the horses, that poor Honor went to the guards of Flann Sinna's son. He will be in a foul mood tomorrow, then, Tadg remarked. Rumour has it, he hates his father so much that he is going to challenge him at the election of High King. Then Don Chada should be marrying Muir, Finn O'Ly said, shaking his head, and he's not, is she? He tripped over a rope supporting the corner of a canvas belonging to the farriers. One came out and grumbled loudly to him in word that, after a good deal of weak ale, Osrith could not discern, although she was sure one word had been, Drayich, and another, Schnapp. It isn't a prerequisite, replied Tadg, who then pointed in the direction of the Hill of Hostages. We were over there, weren't we? Yes, my fine warriors, you are, Domhnall replied, walking towards them from their camp. Trust you had a fine evening. We did indeed, Lord, Fergus drawled, the ale at his head. Beamadagol. No, Fergus, Tadg said, clapping the young warrior on the shoulder. We have already had it tonight. Right, I dare say I do not need a guard tonight, go and rest. My men, keep Osrith safe, the prince added. Before Osrith could protest that she was the soberest one of them all, Domhnall, now more carefree than he had been on the progress since Armagh, or even Doyle, beckoned towards Finn O'Ly, who followed him at once. Be up early, Osrith told herself, as Fergus and Tad held the flap open for her, giving a mock bow, her hand-wed husband adding, my lady, with a flourishing bow. Be clean and presentable for this beautiful dress. Then you can give it back, and then you can get out of it, give it back to the queen and put your own clothes on. It was late in the night, as the noise and the singing had begun to quieten down, that Osrith began to close her eyes. Go down to the sea, Osrith repeated to herself, go at dawn. Make sure you do not let the queen down. Much later, and a rustling came to her ears. She listened in the darkness to THW background noises. This, however, was not the faint undercurrent of a whisper. Nor was it Fergus, nor Tadg, Their exhalations of breath out of unison made it clear they were asleep. No, it was not the warriors. Osrith felt for fed a sword by instinct, cursing herself when she remembered she was without it. Another creak, this time of canvas moving rapidly. Osrith was on her feet, arms out in the darkness to feel who or what was clearly coming in. Osrith. Constantine's voice hissed in the darkness. I need you. Constantine? She felt around in the darkness, and found his arm. Osrith, I need you. He groped for her, feeling across her shoulders, then smoothing down her untucked tunic, his hands feeling up it again, his hands feeling up for her breasts. Osrith shot back, tripping over her bundle of day clothing and her dress. Constantine scrabbled in the darkness for her on the floor, his hands finding her shoulders again, his lips finding hers. Though he was stronger, Osrith reminded herself that she was nimbler, and to use that to her advantage. But, it was too late. As Osrith turned to wriggle out from under him, panic rose in her stomach. He had never tried to kiss or touch her before, and Osrith pushed him off. He flopped back, but then fought himself over to her and tried to kiss her again. No, Constantine. Shan't oily me. Osrith shouted. Her words diminished as he found the rest of her body and knelt over her, kissing her full in the mouth and holding her shoulders down to the linen ground sheet. She felt moisture on her face. Tears. Constantine's. He broke away. I am betrothed, Osrith, Constantine complained bitterly, wiping an arm across his face. Domnall too. But I do not want Era, I want you. Constantine, Osrith interjected. I cannot marry you, I will not marry anyone. And, a jest of a thought played around the periphery of her consciousness which reminded her, you are already, for a year. Then, just come with me, be with me, Osrith. There was triumph in his voice, as if he had just thought of a brilliant plan. I have seen you looking out to sea. We could go to sea. No, Constantine, Osrith protested, still struggling, but failing to remove herself from under Constantine's body. You will be king in Alba one day. I am your companion. At this, his eyes widened and he began to kiss her, roughly. Your champion. I fight for you, nothing more. Osrith managed, jerking her head to one side. Come on. Constantine growled, his weight suddenly lifting off Osrith. She fought to get from his grip, from his face which was polluted by his ale breath. But, he was too quick, quicker than her in the darkness as he anticipated that Osrith would run. Constantine seized her by the wrist and pulled her up, pulling her behind him as they left the tent. A deep, sudden snort suggested that she had stepped on one of the warriors, but no apologizing could be done as Constantine pulled her after him, over linen, over grass, over stones. The cold night air hit her face hard, and Osrith gasped, taking a lungful, her shoulders aching as the prince pulled her on, pressing her up against bark of the oak tree from which their tent hung. The hardness in his breeches made it clear to Osrith what he wanted, and he began to work his way down inside her breeches. She struggled, trying to get his hand away, but the swish of canvas behind her as Finoli and Tadg stood behind Constantine was what caused him to pull away from her. In the moonlight, it looked as if they were about to jump on the prince, though to attack a noble meant death. Osrith, do you think you ought to be getting your beauty sleep? Tadg inquired. Only, ye have a long day tomorrow, and Mia will not be thanking ye if the boy princes are not well attended. Osrith looked over with relief when she saw the warrior's face picked out in the moonlight. Constantine's hands loosened their grip. He scowled at Osrith, and then at Tadg. She began, her heart lightening as she saw Domnall striding over to them. He glared at Constantine, who frowned deeply back to his cousin. Then, shooting Osrith a foul look too, the prince stalked off into the darkness. Osrith made to follow, but Domnall stood in front of her and put a hand on her wrist, waving away his 3 warriors. His father's death weighs heavily, he explained, as Osrith felt herself begin to shake. Now, go, Mocheri. Sleep, for you are needed tomorrow. But Osrith could not sleep, no matter how hard she tried. Her eyes would close, but unconsciousness evaded her. Instead, she got up, careful to step over the 3 bowdews now, which took over most of the tent. The air was cool and refreshing now. The moon had passed its zenith and was now heading to the opposite horizon. Dawn was some way off. Osrith picked a path out of the camp, taking what looked like a well-worn route which she gauged took her to the sea. It was the wrong time of day for any heathen to be here. Few came at night for the natural resources they needed for medicines or their religious rituals. The time to come would be the day, mid-morning, just as the tide was moving and the sea creatures were high up in rock pools, unlucky to be left behind as the sea retreated. And they might even chance on the fair of Tara for business opportunities. Many like Dadg, who were indeed Christian, also believed, deep down, in the old ways. Osrith closed her eyes. A cold, easterly wind blew across the sand, whipping at her face, but otherwise, nothing but silence persisted as mute constellations inched overhead and dipped below the horizon. She looked east again. Just over there, was Cumbraland, or Wellies. If she were to find the heathen and offer to them what she had offered to Beatha, her warrior arm for passage. Will you admit, even to yourself this morning, Osrith's mind cautioned her, sternly, that there is another reason you seek them? Yes, she fought back with herself. I know deep down something's wrong with my body. As dawn twinkled over the horizon, Osrith strode into the sea in her cotton undergarments and, with the last of the fern, washed her body and hair, before making her way up to the royal encampment.